going on, guys, and welcome back to the Repster, where movies and entertainment are our reputation. So Monster Hunter stars Milla Jovovich and Tony Jaa, and the story follows Lieutenant Artemis and her loyal soldiers while in the middle of a desert are transported to another world where they face enormous enemies, monsters. Of course, everybody knows that this is based on the video game by Capcom. I've never played the video game, but I'm pretty sure the material is probably close to what the game was. But again, I've never played it, so I can't really comment on that. This movie was good. It wasn't perfect. Had some issues, but I'll get to those later. So let's get into the positives of Monster Hunter. The story. I like the idea that these soldiers, along with this lieutenant, get swept away into this other world, this outer world, I guess you could call it, where it kind of looks the same, but you know they're in another world because you see monsters. You don't see that in this world. But that was pretty cool. I like that fact. And this girl, she just learns to survive. And she has to cope with where she is and deal with these badass mofos. Speaking of this new atmosphere, this new world, the look of it was pretty decent. It looked the same as our world. Of course, it was in the desert. And it was still like sand everywhere and rocks. But that's about the only difference I could tell. These rocks looked like they were made by the ancient Mayans or something. And that's how old they looked, which is where the monsters presided. Like I said, the look and feel of it was pretty good. Of course, this movie was done right after Paul W.S. Anderson, the director, had done Resident Evil. So it had that same feel to it that film had. Because they were in the desert a lot in that, had that deserty feel. So that's how this felt. It's not a bad thing, but again, to each his own. Had that yellowy/orange feel to it, which really made it kind of an apocalyptic sort of feel. The effects, I gotta admit, was done pretty good. And the budget really showed. It's not one of those high-budgeted movies like Transformers or Mission Impossible or something like that. It was made for around roughly $50 to $60 million. It shows, but in a good way. The effects didn't look cheesy. Usually for movies that's made that much, like I can think of Hellboy, the remake that came out last year, that one kind of looked cheesy, and it was made for around the same amount. This one actually didn't feel like that. It actually felt really decent. It felt really tense because the effects didn't look bad at all. I give it props for that. For a small budget like that, they done their best. It just looked really smooth, and there wasn't really a cheesy moment in there that I seen, in my opinion. There's this one scene, without giving too much away, where these hieroglyphic statues was standing in the middle of that sandstorm in the beginning before they got swept away to this other world. That was pretty cool. It wanted you to know that they got swept away somewhere. The screen kept on blacking out, and then you could see them floating around and stuff. That was pretty cool. Kind of reminded me of that Mad Max Fury Road scene when they were in that desert storm and the lightning was everywhere and stuff and just hitting. But like when the lightning hit those hieroglyphics, well, I guess that was the key for the other world to open. It was just very nicely done. I didn't have a problem with the effects. Like I said, usually movies that are made for around this much, I find that if they add special effects to it, they're cheesy. But I didn't get that feel like that in Monster Hunter. Speaking of the monsters, very badass. Again, the effects for those creatures were amazing. You had these little spider-looking type monsters, and then you had this sand type monster that would delve into the sand and try to get you, like just catch you off guard. Like he'd be underneath your feet, literally kind of like tremors. And then you had a dragon looking like creature that would just fly around. Badass. That's all I can say.
Holy shit.
And the characters was gold. Specifically Milla Jovovich and Tony Jaa. Milla Jovovich, of course, plays Lieutenant Artemis, and she pretty much stole the show. She was a delight. She's a great performer. I've always liked her as an actress. She was very tough, just like she was in Resident Evil. She just held her own. Tony Jaa, ever since I've seen him in Furious 7, which was the first movie I've seen him in, he knows his stuff. He knows a lot of karate and a bunch of martial arts. One might say that he might have like studied up on Bruce Lee because that's how good he was. He knows his stuff. I think he's pretty great. I think he's really good. And speaking of the chemistry between these two characters, was kind of a little bit of a riot. Tony Jah's character, of course, didn't speak English. Milla Jovovich's character didn't understand a word he said, so most of the dialogue was implied. And they knew how to work it out to where you knew what was going on at the same time. So the language barrier didn't have that much effect. It wasn't bad. It wasn't written bad. You could understand by just what was happening and by their hand gestures on how they could communicate with each other. And actually made the comedic element a little bit funnier. I mean, this movie, a lot of people might say that this was really serious, but there was some comedic elements just solely for that matter because of the chemistry between these two. If you didn't have the chemistry between these two, then yeah, I would agree that this movie was just straight up serious. But I think that's what made this movie a little comedic because of the language barrier and the chemistry between Milla and Tony. Now let's slide into the mix. Another favorite actor of mine was also in this, Ron Perlman. As much as I liked his acting in this, they made him look like a lion. Oh, Lion King. It was just a little over the top. But he was a good performer, as usual. I like all the stuff that he's in. They could have toned down on his look. I don't know what they were going for. Maybe he was trying to give out a Neanderthal look or an ancient people's look or whatever. I don't know. But setting that aside, I thought he was terrific in this as well. And let's slide into the negatives, as I was mentioning before. Paul W.S. Anderson tends to take this a little bit too far, which is the editing. It was horrible. Just like with the last Resident Evil, the final chapter, I don't know why he feels like he needs to edit these the way he does, but he just does. And I don't understand it. There's so many cuts. There's like 15 different cuts for just one stunt. And there's just no need for that. I don't understand why some of these directors feel the need to do that. Like in Taken 3, for example, they use like 15 different cuts just to show Liam Neeson jump over a fence. I know they all have their own directing style. Michael Bay has his own, Steven Spielberg has his own, and so on and so forth. But some of these directors, like Paul W.S. Anderson and Oliver Megaton, which he does the same thing. I mean, look at Taken 2 and 3 and Columbiana, which was like movies that came out back in the early 2010s. For some reason, Hollywood felt the need to overboard it. And I really don't understand why, but I really had a problem with the editing in this. It was really crappy. You couldn't really tell what was going on. It was a bunch of shaky cameras everywhere. That's a real problem. That's just a real problem. It's just obscured. And this has been addressed several times. Fans like myself and actual professional critics has spoken, and it's all over the internet, but it's like this guy doesn't really care. He just doesn't give a crap, and I don't understand why. Plus, everything this director does, it's never original. Ever since Event Horizon and Alien vs. Predator, he's always done movies based on video games. Resident Evils, this one, and like several others I'm pretty sure that he's done that is not original. I mean, if you look at his filmography, it's always based on other material, mostly games. He just finished the Resident Evil films, and now he does this, which is also based on a game. And it's probably films that he enjoys doing, and hey, all power to him. Go for it, dude. If you like doing what you do, then continue. But every now and then, throw something original. There's a lot of directors out there that does the same thing, but at least they throw something original out, and not just every 10, 15, 20 years. That's all I'm saying. And the ending was a bit of a downer. Without giving too much away, if you recall The Amazing Spider-Man 2 on how that ended, it was a lot like that. And we all know how that ended up, which really scares me because, again, money talks, and in a world like this, with a pandemic still around, I'm sorry. I'm trying so hard not to be too negative, but you never know what's going to happen. And even before this pandemic started, there have been so many freaking movies where, and this is a real pet peeve of mine, this pisses me off to the max, but they leave it open and they don't do no more. Even if some of these movies is done well, the critics will bash it to the point to where there's no return, and then they won't do any more anyway. That really ticks me off. I hate it when they leave stuff open only to get dumped. It's stupid. So hopefully this movie will still do somewhat well. Just well enough for them to, continue to say whatever they want to say. But it's just, I feel like I'm pretty much being set up for disappointment. That's all I'm saying. Monster Hunter is exactly what you'd expect. If you're just looking for a good time with friends and not to expect too much, look no further. It's spicy but digestible. Before I end this video, I just want to say that this has been a very crappy year for everyone, as everyone has been suffering through this pandemic. I'm here to say don't give up hope, and just know that this thing won't last forever. It won't. I mean, I believe that it won't, and you should too. Just stay strong, keep positive, just keep doing what you're doing, be safe, and be real. And for all of those who are saying that the theater experience is dead, may it last forever. So, Monster Hunter, have you seen it yet? What did you think of it? Did you like Milla and Tony's chemistry? Did you like the action in it? What are your favorite monster movies? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. Stay tuned for more videos or reviews coming soon. Like, subscribe, and comment if you hadn't already, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace, the rip out.